Hello everybody, going to be starting in just a few seconds. You might be good enough to type Y into the chat box there, let me know that you can hear me okay, and we'll just get going in just a little minute. Okay, hello everybody and welcome. Thank you for being with us. This webinar is about how to differentiate your recruitment business, and it'll take about 35-40 minutes, something around there. And what I'm hoping in this webinar is to give you a model, an approach, a way of doing things perhaps a little bit differently, so that you can stand out from the crowd. So let's get started. I'm going to just do a quick change over here, screen share, so bear with me just one sec, and get the screen up there for you. And you can see here that I have a couple of comments here before I start. I said how to really differentiate your recruitment business. How to double your business. Can you imagine doubling your business? So it's an interesting question. What would you do to double your business? To build additional revenue streams, to build stickiness with your clients, to provide a better service to your clients, to add additional value to your clients. And can you imagine doing all of that an easier way? I hope you like this slide. Popeye there eating his spinach. And I only have one point I really want to make here. And it is that recruitment, like your waistline, is an investment in the future. If you eat your veg and you stay away from your carbs and sugar, you'll be lean and mean. If you don't, you won't. And the exact same is true of recruitment. If you put the effort in up front, if you make the investment in terms of preparation, understanding what you really need, getting the right people on board, then over the fullness of time, the results of that will become apparent, just like your waistline. It'll become apparent to everybody. A high-functioning team, engaged people, high-performing, and so on, easy to manage. All these things happen when you build a world-class team, when you build the right people who actually fit in with the roles. So think about this. You make investments in infrastructure, in capital, and so on and so forth. Imagine making the same approach, taking a long-term view and saying that recruitment is an investment in the future. And if you make the investment now, and if you make it correctly, you will see a meaningful return on that investment. Don't think about recruitment as just filling a role. And when you're talking to your clients, don't think about recruitment as just you have a role to fill, let's get some people. Think about this as an investment in the future. It's really important, because what I'm going to talk about in a while requires that kind of mindset. So, how do you really differentiate your recruitment business? And I want to give you a little bit of feedback here that I got from a client just recently. We did an exercise with the client where we helped them, I'll talk about this case study in just a moment. We helped them identify their sales and marketing director, and then subsequently some senior salespeople. But when we finished the exercise and we'd onboarded the person and so on and so forth, the client said to me, engaging you was the single best business decision I have ever made. Now that is some testimonial. And I wrote down a few questions here. Do you think that, or why do you think he said that? Why were we so different from the competition? What do we do that was so different from another recruitment company that came in and made a pitch and started actually a process with them, and eventually told them to go away, told them to go home? Why were we so different? Because clearly we were. Number two, do you think the client is going to go to a competitor having done what we've done? Well, the answer is clearly no. Do you think this client is going to come back for more? Well, the answer is yes, he already has. He came back and he asked us to recruit 2 more people. Now we're talking about doing a whole exercise on this team, I'll come back to in a few minutes in the case study. And do you think the client will refer us? And the question is absolutely. In fact, the client is doing a list up of people that he thinks that we should be talking to right now. It hasn't happened yet, but it's in the pipeline. So this is a real life case study that we've been doing just recently, and I want to run you through this case study. It was a small to medium enterprise. The company was owner managed, so the MD of the company actually owned it. He built it from scratch. He'd been through the recent economic downturn, like everybody else, the Great Recession. He was losing energy. He was coming back out. It was turning over a little over half of what he'd been turning over at the peak. And he really wasn't sure that he had the energy and the commitment to go forward and rebuild it again. And finally, he was sort of looking for an exit. In some way, he wanted somebody to come in and sort of take it over and take the business forward for him. So this was the case. He said it was very clear this was the most important decision he was going to make that year. That if he got it right, everything would work. If he got it wrong, he was in deep trouble. So let's just talk quickly about the actual case itself. Just a quick overview of the case, if you wish. What we did, and then I'm going to talk about all this in detail in a few minutes, so bear with me. What we did initially was we identified the key accountabilities, why the job exists. From that, we produced a benchmark where we could actually compare people with metrics, compare people to it. From that, we came up with an ideal candidate form and created a job posting. From that job posting, we had 86 applications, which we screened down using a series of different screening techniques, soft skills, experience, and so on, phone screening, using a top grading type of approach. We screened them down to 10 applicants. And with those 10 applicants, we compared them to the benchmark of the role. We picked 5. We did a 1-hour interview, the CEO and myself. We did them together. We did a selection process, a 1-hour interview with each, picked 2 candidates, and then took those 2 candidates through a comprehensive half-day to 1-day process with the team where they presented, where they were interviewed, where they met various people, a series of different interactions. I came to a conclusion with the team at the end of the day on who the preferred candidate was. So that's sort of the process that we went through with them. I'm going to go through all of that in great detail in a few minutes. So the first question I want to ask here is, what makes this process unique and effective? What makes this process unique and effective? We have a success rate in TTI of 92% using this process. That's the first clear, uniqueness of this. And it's a very, very high success rate. The second is that it has a huge impact on the client business. It helps you build the client relationship. It helps you add additional value right through the process. When you finish the recruitment and selection process, it allows you to continue on and add incredible additional value. And this is a really, really easy way to do it, much easier than the normal approach that one takes to this. So what I'm proposing is that as you think about recruitment, as you go in as a recruiter, you're talking to a client, that you don't just think about the notion of, I have to find, here's the role, there's a vacancy there, I need to find somebody that fits somebody into that role. Not to just think that way about it, but think more in terms of how can we find the right person who match them up effectively with the role so they'll be fully engaged, so that they will be able to advance in the organization, add real value, perform very, very highly. Because ultimately, the measure must be for a recruitment company, the measure must be that you put candidates in front of the client that not only can he hire a candidate, but candidates who will actually stay. They won't leave after 6 months, they'll stay for a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. They will be really engaged, a really good match, will add incredible value in that role. That must be the ultimate metric for you. So you need to keep this model of that it's not just about recruiting, it's about the whole life cycle of the person in the organization, and that you're responsible for kicking off that life cycle and providing the wherewithal for the company to continue with a process based on the tools and techniques that you use in the recruitment process. So it's not just about thinking about yourself as a recruiter, but think of yourself as a partner with an organization and helping them get highly engaged, high-performing people, well-matched their role, that continue on to add real value to the company. Remember, recruitment is an investment in the future. So you're putting the upfront effort in to really make it different, really make it work for your client. So let's start with the challenges. So when we talk about identifying or about recruitment for companies, there are a number of problems that need to be solved. And I want to talk about them one at a time. The first one is role clarity. If you asked me, what do I think is the single biggest problem that companies have in recruiting effectively? I believe the problem is they don't know what they're recruiting for. Simple as that. They don't really understand it. And the best example you can see of that is when you get a number of people involved in the recruitment process. And if you interviewed each one individually, you'd find they all have a different understanding of the role and what's required to be effective in it. So for me, the starting point in an effective recruitment process is to really get this role clarity, understand what are the key accountabilities. What is this role supposed to deliver? Absolutely, clearly, definitively, no ambiguity, black and white on a sheet of paper. in a way that's measurable. We can put metrics on it, and in a way that we then put attributes such as behaviours, motivators, hard skills, etc., attached to those key accountabilities. I.e., to say, if this is what the role has to deliver on, then what is required in terms of hard skills? What's required in terms of experience? What's required in terms of behaviours and motivators and acumen and competencies and so on and so forth? And then have absolute agreement amongst the key people, whoever these key people are who are making this hiring decision, absolute agreement that this is the role and here's what's required for that role to be successful. If a person to be effective in that role, here's what's required. Because once that's done, you can then have clear communications. You, the recruiter, and the people team can say very clear, this is the role, this is what it looks like, here's how we can communicate to the world, here's the kind of ad we can develop, here's, and so on and so forth. And the consequence of that, of course, is you attract the right candidates. And that leads you then, of course, into the process of when you attract the right candidates. It's easy to screen to all the rest that comes from there because you have absolute clarity amongst this key group of people about what the role is and what a successful person in that role would look like. So imagine the job is talking. It's the simplest way of doing this. Imagine the role itself, the job is talking. How would it describe itself? What would it say are its absolute accountabilities, its absolute what would it say it requires across a range of areas, be it behaviours, be it their whys or hows or whatever. It makes a difference. What is required with the job that is required to be effective, to have superior performance in that role? And once you understand that, you're off. So that's the first problem as I see it that has to be addressed. The second big issue that I see that has to be addressed is job matching or retention. And the problem I see here is that it's not just about, as I said, it's not just about hiring the right person. It's about hiring the right person who stays. And the key issue here, so if we said the first problem is understanding the role clarity. The second problem, I think, is information on the job on what superior performance looks like so that we can actually hire somebody who will stay. Poor hiring equals poor retention. So if we said that recruitment is an investment in the future, it's like eating your veg, the results become apparent over time, i.e. the person stays, they don't stay, they're high performer, they're not high performer. So the key issue here is making sure that we hire people who are going to stay. There's a single, so first is role clarity, second is hiring people who are going to stay, making sure that we're absolutely matching people effectively to the role so they're fully engaged, they get on board, they have the skills, they have the competence, they have whatever's required to be effective. So they're happy in the role, so they stay in there and they become high performers. So the first problem is role clarity. The second problem is absolutely matching people. Like this idea of matching the person to the job so they actually stay. So we have to actually define the role in a way where we can actually match people up. And it's interesting, in the 2009 article by the HBR, Harvard Business Review, called The Definitive Guide to Recruiting in Good Times and Bad, they noted that many companies fail to hire and retain the best talent because, I'm reading here, without an effective recruitment process in place, they inadvertently treat hiring situations like an emergency. And as a result, about 1/3 of promising new hires depart within 3 years. So if the first problem is role clarity, the second problem is matching the people effectively. So putting the tools in place that allow you to effectively match the people. So when you're actually hiring somebody, you're looking across the desk and you know whether or not they're a good match. You're not guessing, you're not hoping. And if you look at the picture here of the recruiter, he's there and he's in the interview process. And what's he doing? He's praying. And what do you think he's praying for? He's saying, oh Lord, that this won't be right. He's praying for the truth of the matter is, he's looking across the desk and he doesn't know if this person's right or not. And why doesn't he know? He doesn't know because he doesn't have role clarity. He doesn't know absolutely what the deliverables are. He hasn't benchmarked the role effectively. He can't see clearly what the role requires across a range of areas. And then he's no tool for actually comparing the person to the job to say, yes, this person matches up well. This person has a high probability of being effective and being successful in this role. So it's critical. These two things are critical issues and they need to be addressed effectively. So the third problem, as I see it, or the third issue, I suppose, whatever way you want to put this, the third issue that needs to be addressed is building stickiness and additional revenue streams. So the first is role clarity. The second is making sure that we're matching the person with the job effectively so we get a high retention, and high engagement, high performance. And the third issue you need to address is how do you build stickiness? So how can you, from this process, how can you generate stickiness with a client when they don't want to go anywhere else, and how can you generate additional revenue streams? And the answer, of course, is by embedding the system and having multi-use tools. So the idea is that if you can have a process, a recruitment and selection process that you're engaged in with the client, and that embeds a system in the organization that they then use thereafter for onboarding people, for coaching people, for succession planning, for development planning, for performance reviews. If you've got a foundation they can actually use, you can give them tools very, very simply they can use. You can do two things, or three things actually. You can embed the system in the organization, you can build real stickiness with your client, and from that you can generate additional revenue streams. And we'll talk about that in a moment, because I don't believe recruitment is just about recruiting me for a job. I think you can do more as a recruitment specialist in an organization following on from the additional recruitment. So, flicking down very quickly, just want to make a comment here before I go any further. And at the end of this, or shortly before the end of this, I'm going to click up an offer where you can download a guide. And this is a guide on this webinar. And all the slides will be there, all the notes will be there, a sort of comprehensive how-to guide to implement this system. So obviously, this is a webinar. I'm going to go through the material fairly quickly. The idea is to give you an overview and understanding, so that you say, yeah, I get it, I understand how it works, and I want to do it. And therefore, you can download the guide. Say, this is how you actually do it. I'm not going to go through every single detail of how to do it here. We wouldn't have time. So just before I move on, just make one last comment. I want you to imagine the following. Imagine your client saying, are you saying to your client, imagine you saying to your client, we can select superior performance, like real superior performance. We can really get you the right people who perform really, really well. We can not only hire the right people who perform really, really well, we get these people to stay for a long, long time and reduce turnover, have full engagement, and all that comes from that. Imagine I'd be able to say to them, and not only that, we can show you how to put a development plan in place based on the gaps between what the job requires and what they have, so they become even better performers. We can show you how to do gap analysis and how to do a development plan coming straight out of that, very, very simply. And we can show you how to do a performance management system that then allows you to appraise performance and continue the development process. Can you imagine saying that? Can you imagine saying to a client, we can through this recruitment selection process, we can make high performance the norm in your organization. It's really interesting. We can make or help align everybody with the strategic plan of the organization so that high performance becomes the norm. Can you imagine that? That's a really, really powerful thing for you as a recruiter to be able to say to a client. This is the deliverable. The deliverable isn't just recruiting somebody, it's recruiting somebody who's going to do all the stuff that falls on to allow high performance to permeate the organization. And remember, you and I, we all know this. It's people, strategy, execution, and cash in that order. If you get the right people in the right seats, if you can do that, high performing people match the roles where they're going to be successful, full engagement, the strategy follows, they get engaged with strategy, performance comes from that, and everything else flows from there. We know this. Getting the people on board, the right people, is the key thing for any organization. Everything flows from there. And if you get that wrong, no matter how good the strategy is, no matter how good the execution is, no matter how much cash you have, it makes no difference. You will fail, without a doubt, or at best you'll be mediocre. So if you're looking for high performance, this is the way you have to go. So, moving on. Interesting. My experience has been, and people ask me all the time, I'm going to show you a tool in a moment that's a very quick and simple way of doing this. And you used to have a long or more comprehensive way, I suppose you might say, but we scrapped it. And we scrapped it for a number of reasons. People used to say, what are the biggest obstacles to implement the system? And we had three of them. And the first one was the reason we changed the system and went for a simpler, more effective model. It's time. When you want to do this, the biggest problem you have is getting these key people, particularly if you're hiring at a high level, if you're recruiting at a high level for senior people, getting the other senior people that you need to get engaged in the process, getting them all together for sufficient time in one place is almost impossible. And getting to focus while they're there, very, very difficult. Single biggest problem. The second biggest problem is removing bias. Even if you do get them together, how can you help them remove the bias? They don't like the way he or she looks. They don't like the school they went to. They don't like the way they talk. They don't like this. They don't like that. They don't like that. We're all full of prejudice. Every single one of us. We're full of prejudice, and it's subtle. Very, very subtle. We don't even know what's happening. So how can we help these people, if we can get them together, remove this bias? And the third thing is how we get these people to get completely engaged, get complete buy-in. So they say at the end of the process, we committed, we made the effort, we've hired the person, as a group, we've chosen this person as the right person, and we're completely in support of this person. We believe this person will be successful, and we're really going to get behind them. How do you get that? So these are the biggest obstacles I see to effective role clarity and to effective recruitment. And this process I'm about to walk through with you really helps you fly through those three, really cut through them and eliminate them. So let's start and let's look at the actual model itself. And again, remember, I'm going through this fairly quickly. I'll give you the guide at the end that you can download. And if you download the guide and you like what you read there, it all makes sense to you, you want some more help, you want some more support, or you want to engage with us, please feel free to contact us. Contact us. I'm happy to sit down, meet with anybody, do a Skype call, whatever, walk you through the material in greater detail, explain it in a more comprehensive way if you're interested in what we're talking about. So at the end, click on the button, get the guide, follow up with us. There's no point listening to the webinar going away and saying that was interesting and doing nothing about it. Please engage with us. At the very least, you'll learn some more, and we learn some more. We get some feedback from you. So here we go. I'm going to quick overview first the process and walk through it step by step. So the first step in this process is identify the subject matter experts. Who are the key people who need to be involved in hiring this person, who understand the role very, very well. So it can be an incumbent in the role, it can be the role's boss, it can be people who work with the role, it can actually even be somebody from outside the role, from outside the company, I should say, who works in that role in a different organization. So identify subject matter experts and brief them on the process, and then complete the key accountability exercise with them. Review and edit that, and I'll tell you how you can do that very, very simply in a few minutes. From that, create a job benchmark, behaviors, motivators, acumen, competencies, and so on, and review and edit that with them, and then prepare an ideal candidate form. So if that's what the job looks like, what does an ideal candidate look like? And so there you'll include things like the hard experience, the skills, the education, all the other bits and pieces you want, including the psychometric type of thing that we talk about. From that, you can prepare your communication pieces. And so you go to the marketplace with your communication pieces, and or just to do direct comparison with people you have on file. And from that, you assess individuals and compare to benchmarks. So you get candidates in, you go through a screening process, and ultimately you end up with a shortlist. You compare them to the benchmark. From that comparison process, you go into an interviewing and selection process. And once you've selected your ideal candidate, you can then do an onboarding, development plan, performance plan, etc. from the process. So that's what this process is all about. This is the system. It's really simple, and I'm going to walk through it now step by step. So step one, identify 3 to 5 subject matter experts. So you go in there and say, who are 3 to 5 people who have an understand the role intimately and or have a stake in its success? And I make the point there again, some of them may be from outside the organization. You might have somebody who really understands the role, has no stake in success, can come from a different company, but really understands it and may be able to bring a lot of clarity to what the role is really about. So that's step number one. Step number two, you email them. So you brief these people and you email them, say, listen, this is what we're trying to do. I need your involvement in this. And say, I'm going to give you, on top of a week or whatever, I'll talk about this in a moment, I'm going to give you a period of time. And I'd like you to answer the following questions about the role. So, simple questions. Why does this position exist? What are the key responsibilities? What are the key results expected of this position? What qualities, skills, and knowledge are required? And how does this position interface with others? These are questions I use. I have a list of, I think, about 26 questions. These are the ones I'm using at the moment. Sometimes I tweak them a little bit. And you send these out to your subject matter experts. And you say, listen, you've got a week to review this, think about it. And at the end of a week, what I want you to do is I want you to email me back. And I usually include a weekend, by the way, in the week. That gives me the opportunity to reflect over the weekend at the end. I often get responses back actually on a Sunday around lunchtime. But and I usually say I want it back at 9:29 on a Monday morning. So I say that could be 1 hour to put it together, because I have to have it in 10:30 back at wherever, my client, whatever I say. So I give them an odd time, it sort of sticks in their mind. And you give them a week. And what happens then over the week is, as they're going through the process over the week, they're not giving hours and hours and hours. They're not coming together. They're not having to chunk out an afternoon or anything. But what they do is it could be 10 minutes here, 10 minutes here, 5 minutes here. They're having insights as the week progresses, having conversations with people, they're in meetings, and they've thought pops into their head, and they make a note of it. And you end up with a sort of an individual brainstorming, a much more comprehensive input from each individual. And then, so what you do is at the end of the week, then they send that back to you. And you ask them to send them back. So let's say you have 5 people, just keep these really simple, you send them 5 questions. You now have 25 paragraphs. And this is the first piece of work you really do. You sit down for an hour and a half, and from those 25 paragraphs, you craft, let's say, 5 key accountability statements. I'm going to show you an example of this in a few minutes. 5 key accountability statements here. Like one might be leadership, one might be strategic business development, one might be, I have no idea. This gives you an idea of the kind of headings you end up with. And then from the statements, you put them together and you craft 4 or 5 key accountability statements that summarize what everybody's saying the role is responsible for, what it has to deliver on, and so on and so forth. And then you send them back. You email these out to your subject matter experts. You still haven't met them. Nobody sat down. Nobody's got together in the same room. You just send them all out and say, listen, guys, what do you think? Does this make sense to you? Does this resonate with you? And you ask them to add value to it, correct where necessary, edit where necessary. And so you get this and people send them back to you. And you can do this if you want. You can do this on Skype or on GoToMeeting or Webinar Jam or any of these tools. But I just tend to email back out, get people's feedback, and it comes back to me. And I then give it maybe another 10, 15 minutes. That's all it takes. And I edit the key accountability statements that we have. So at this stage, everybody's putting in a lot of time, but they just don't realize it. You've put in an hour, maybe an hour and a half of your time, and they've put in maybe 2 or 3 hours over the week, 10 days, but they're not aware they've done this because they've done it in little bits and pieces. And they've had the opportunity to reflect and go back over the stuff and add value more and more. And here's a simple, I just want to show you this. Here's one, for example, ABC Group General Manager. Obviously this is fictitious, but this actually comes directly from a real exercise that we did. And over there, you can see the reasons the job exists, etc. Well, I think we had about 40 or 50 statements there that came back in from the subject matter experts. And then I consolidated those here. I organized them by category. So I took the first one, put a category A, the second one said, is that the same? I said, no, I made a category B, and so on and so forth. And when they were all A, B, C, D's, E's, I just reorganized them and ranked them based on the A, B, C, D's, and E's. And I looked at all the A's and I wrote up a statement. So I said, strategic thinking and planning for all these statements over here. And I wrote up here, wrote a statement. And I did this for each of them. And that's what I emailed back out to everybody and asked them to edit them and add value to it. So then what you do is you get everybody together. You've done this exercise. You've given everybody the key accountabilities. You can do it on a sheet like this as well if you're not using an Excel spreadsheet, whatever. And you send them all back out. Everybody gets them. And then you get everybody together for 1 hour online. So this is the first time everybody's come together. They all have the key accountability statements that you send back out, either as like this or as Excel spreadsheet, depending which way you're doing it. And you get them all together and you spend about 15 minutes. You go back over those key accountability statements and you spend about 15 minutes reviewing them. And then what you do is, see here, the ranking. What you do is you say to people, okay, if we had to, once we've agreed them, if we had to drop one, which one would you drop? And you rank it number 5. If you had to drop another one, which would you drop? You'd rank number 4. And quite a bit of debate takes place around this. And you rank them 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And when you're them all ranked, you say, okay, we're all happy that this is number 1, this is number 2, this is number 3, number 4, in order of importance. Let's say, how much time does a person have to spend on each one? And this is important from a point of view of behavior, understanding what the behavioral profile of the individual would be. Like, where are they going to spend their time? Because you may find, in this case, it happens to be that they follow the ranking. But quite often they don't. Item number 3 or 4 might take 50% of the time. Because that's where a lot of time is spent, even though it's not the number 1 priority, it actually gobbles up a lot of time for that role. So you do that exercise, and then you go online to our IDS system, our own portal, and you say, okay, if these are the key accountabilities, what companies are required? And you go through an exercise here, picking, saying this one is absolutely important, need this one, or this is situational, or it's actually non-essential. And you go through 25 companies and you rank them. You go through 12 behaviors, you go through 12 driving forces, you go through a number of acumen indicators, and you rank them. And when you rank them, you end up with a little sheet like this over on the left. And it ranks them all 1 to 25 in this particular case, because we have 25 competencies. And then you drag them over, say, okay, which ones are primary, which ones are situational, whichever. And you sort of move around. Each time you mouse over one of these, what happens is up pops a definition of it. And again, there's quite a bit of debate. You drag them across. What's number 1? What's number 2? Is like urgency number 1, or is customer service number 1? And you start moving around, you agree what they are. And when you finish that exercise, you'll end up with a profile. And the profile will be something like this. You'll have a behavioral profile like that, that shows how you do things, how you like to do things. So this profile here for this job obviously requires somebody who's ambitious and pioneering, that's optimistic, that's very fast moving and firm and independent. And then you say, like, that's the how they like to work, or what this job requires of the way the person works. Here's what the job requires in terms of motivation. So this looks for a person who's high resourceful, and who's high commanding, receptive, and intentional. So look at your profile of the why. Why this person gets out of bed, why they come to work, like what are the motivators that are really, really driving them. This one looks at the competencies, like what are the top competencies. Typically we look at the top 7 that the job requires. In this particular case, we're saying self-starting, flexibility, influencing others, and so on. And the last one then is acumen, capacity. What are the acumen? What is the potential of this individual, ability to make good decisions or balanced judgment, all this, like how they view themselves, how they view the world. Like what is their acumen, capacity? These are really powerful tools that are coming out of this. So you'll have your key accountability statements, and then you'll have these various behaviors, driving forces, competencies, acumen, capacity, and so on. So now you'll start having a very, very, very clear view of what the role looks like. And you look at this benchmark with your subject matter experts. They say, wow, this is really impressive. You'll have job competency questionnaires, driving force questionnaires, and so on coming out of it, definitions of what the job looks like. And people will be able to say very, very clearly what the job looks like. So now that you've got your subject matter experts, these people are going to be involved in this hiring decision, this recruitment process. This is the job, guys. Is everybody happy that this really is the job? This is really what we're trying to accomplish here. This is really what this job requires for superior performance. And everybody says, yeah, everybody's on board, or you tweak a couple of bits and pieces if necessary. And then you sit down and say, okay, step 4, let's prepare an ideal candidate form. So if this is what the job requires, what does the ideal candidate look like? So we already have our behaviors, our driving forces, our competencies, and our acumen, capacity. We then go and look at things like, for example, pre-employment. We look at educational requirements. We look at experience and other items that are really important for this the ideal candidate to have to be effective in this role. We also include things, by the way, like pre-qualifier questions, phone screening questions, resume screen preferences, and so on. It's like red lines for the recruiter, and so on. And things we want to know. If they don't have this, we don't want this. Compensation package. We start collating the information around the job into one place called the ideal candidate form. So then, effectively, what the person has, when you go to the point of step 5, advertising or briefing somebody, what you actually have is you have your key accountabilities. We now know what the deliverables are for the role, what the metrics are on that, the ranking of them. We know the behavioural, competency, driving force, and acumen profile. We know the hard skills, the education, and so on that requires. You have all this documentation there, very, very clear. So it's very easy to brief somebody, be it a headhunter, be it an advertising agent, go put an ad in place, be a recruitment company, be whatever. Whomever you're trying to brief or whatever you're trying to do, we use this then to craft our ad. So when we work with a client directly, we use this to craft our advert or whatever. And it's hugely powerful. You're literally lifting text directly from the benchmark, directly from the key accountabilities, and building your ad based on that. And so you end up here with candidates coming in. Remember our process, we ended with 86 candidates, and we did our pre-screening. So we assessed and compared the individuals to the benchmark. There's one individual as an example compared to it. You can see there the basketball hoop, the white dot is the job, the blue dot is the individual, and you have competent behaviors and driving forces there as the example. Over the right hand side, you have a summary page that shows how the person matches up to the job. Here's a range of people compared to the job. So again, we looked at the competence here. I see 4 or 5 people there compared to the job. And so you're in a really strong position now, all of a sudden, to start looking at people and comparing people, assessing people, and pre-screening people, and so on and so forth. All the information that you require is there. So it's a very, very simple process to take the next step, if you wish. And again, I just popped up beside this, and don't forget download the guide, guys, and don't forget I'm available after this webinar. And once you've read the guide, you can come back to me, and I'm available to talk to you and to help you with the process. And of course, once you've done that process, you don't stop there. You take the next logical step. The next logical steps are what? Well, the next logical step is say, okay, if this is the individual, this is the job, there's a gap. No matter how good the candidate is, there's going to be a gap. Can we produce a simple development plan? Well, the answer is absolutely you can. Once you have the person's profile there and the job profile, you have a gap report. From that gap report, you can go online to ttidevelopment.com and immediately just key in a few simple things, and out will come a development plan for that individual. It's really quite remarkable. And you bind it, there's the person's plan. So imagine you're onboarding somebody and you say, there's your profile, there's the gap report in the job, here's your development plan to help you become more and more effective in the role. Would that be valuable, do you think, for your client? Would they say, wow, this is really impressive. Not only have we hired a great person, we got a development plan to help them become even more effective. And then imagine you hand them something like this. And you have a complete performance plan showing where the person defines what the role is with you. We go back with that exercise. You and I'm talking about the recruiter here and the selection person here and the client here, going back in there with the candidate who's been selected and developing a performance plan with the client. Would that be useful? I think that would be very, very useful. So let me I wanted to show you a practical example. That case study we talked about earlier, hiring the sales and marketing person for this SME. Let me just walk you through the case study. So we did the exercise. Do you remember we said we profiled the job, did the key accountabilities, did the benchmark, did our pre-screening with our ideal candidate, went through all of that, and then prepared our ad, got our ad up there, and here it was. Sales director. This is what came directly from the key account in the benchmark. Here's a sales director talking about the opportunity, what it is, how it looks like. Then we had the key accountabilities. So again, we lift this directly from the documentation that we prepared. We had the ideal person. What are you? Again, coming directly from the benchmark exercise we did. As we talked about the behaviors, the driving force, the competence, and all these kinds of things. The words like customer focus, anticipating exceeding customer needs. As a leader, you achieve extraordinary business results. Being resilient and answerable. All these things came directly from the benchmarking exercise. And then we talked about the experience acquired that came from our ideal candidate form. And finally, the salary and benefits. And then when we did the exercise, when we did this, we put our ad up. We got our 86 respondents. We pre-screened them based on the ideal candidate form. And then we got to the point where we're actually comparing them. And we compared 10 candidates to the job. And this is actually that case study. Right, what you're seeing up there in front of you is actually the candidates. All just blanked out their details. But there were the candidates compared to the actual job. And we're able to look at these candidates. And from that, we were able to pick 5 people that we decided that we were going to interview. And we interviewed those 5 people, and from those 5 people, based on the interview process, and remember the interview questions were generated by the exercise. We had them there in front of us. We interviewed the individuals. We knew exactly where to focus on them, and we did our gap report on each individual. We had the gap report just like this. There it is. We were able to look at the individual, compare the individual with the job, have a clear gap report, actually share that with the individual in the interview if necessary. Have the interview questions there in front of us, and interview the individuals. We did our first interviews, and then we did our second interviews. We picked our candidate and offered them the job. And the candidate, who was so impressed with the process, who had never experienced anything like it in their lives, took the job, of course, and we hired them. And the question then was, of course, the candidate was hired, and you would say, well, that's the end of my my intervention. That's the end of my contribution and my value add to the client. Not so. The first thing that can happen, you can say to the client, we can now do a profile on you and compare you to this sales director. So the CEO of this particular company, there's his profile. We actually did a profile of him, his behaviors, driving force, his dimensional balance, i.e. his acumen capacity. We actually compared him and the sales director together in a comparison report, and we did a debriefing where we actually debriefed the two of them on their behavioral styles, on their motivational styles, on their acumen, and so on and so forth, where they were both strong, where they were weak, how they would communicate, how they should manage each other, how they should work together, all this as part of the onboarding process. And then coming out of that, we did a coaching report. We actually prepared a coaching report on the sales director on how he should be coached and what was required to help him, for the CEO to coach and work with him and help him and develop him. And we prepared his professional development plan. Again, it was just literally a 10-minute exercise, taking the gap report, or what we saw in the gap report, keying it into on the online site, keying it in, pressing the button, and out came the professional development plan, all ready to rock and roll, focus on the areas of development need, and ready to be completed by the company and by the individual. And lastly, from that, we gave them a performance management tool that allowed them to immediately go and start a performance review process. And we believe in strong starts. We believe in really working very, very closely with the CEO, in this particular case, the sales director, but it makes no difference. The hirer and the hiree working very, very closely together, talking daily, weekly, monthly, having regular performance reviews, but not performance reviews as are typically thought of, but performance reviews are focused on performance. Performance reviews that talk about how are you getting on, where are the strengths, where are the weaknesses, where are the problem areas, how do we need to develop you, and looking at the development plans, is this happening, is this not happening, are you being resourced effectively, and so on and so forth, and having a dialogue, a meaningful dialogue with the client, with the candidate, to have them on board. So the question I want to ask you is, the question I asked you at the beginning, how do you differentiate your recruitment business? How can you really show your client that what you can do is different? I mean, I believe that the recruitment business is being commoditized. Maybe the higher echelons where collections and where headhunting is still a big part of it, fair enough. But in general, I think even at some senior levels, the recruitment business is being commoditized. And if you want to be successful and continue to be successful, you must differentiate. You must add value, and you have to demonstrate. Not just to add value, you have to demonstrate that value to your clients, and you have to do it, in my opinion, by using science, by ending up with candidates who actually match the role, by giving your clients tools, allow them to onboard the person effectively, to make sure the person is engaged and they're developed, to allow them to develop succession planning, and so on in the organization. So, how to really differentiate your recruitment business? This is how I think you have to do it. And if you want to be effective and work with clients where you're adding value, this is the way to do it. So I'm saying to you again, don't forget to download the guide. And again, once you've read the guide, there's additional option to work with me one-on-one where we have a conversation. There's no charge for this. I'm happy to brief you, to talk about this in more detail so that you can work through. And I'm just popping up the offer now. It's going to be there for the next couple of minutes, just while I take a couple of questions that are coming in from people. And you'll have another few minutes to download the guide as I walk through. So the first question I've got here that I'm looking in front of me. People say this, okay, I'm really keen to go ahead and try the process. How do I walk through the process once I have the guide? Well, that's very simple. As I said, you just contact me at TTI, just email me, and we're happy to walk through the process with you and help you out here. Okay, here the question is, how did we advertise? How do we actually find the candidates? We actually access the candidates through LinkedIn. And it's sort of interesting, we popped our ad up on LinkedIn. Of the 86 candidates, I can probably say that half them we discounted very, very quickly on the initial screening with our knockout questions, and we discount them very, very quickly. And we ended up probably around 30 or 40 candidates that we thought were serious. We did a pre-screening of those candidates and probably took those candidates down to around 15 candidates very, very quickly based on pre-screening. And the pre-screening had knockout questions. The pre-screening had a phone interview, a couple of quick bits and pieces we did. It was very, very quick, maybe 15 minutes per candidate. We screened them out. And we ended up very, very quickly with 10 candidates that we brought to the client. The client then looked at those 10 candidates, compared the benchmark, and looked at their CVs, he had a file of each one, and picked the 5 that they thought, the client themselves thought, were the most likely. And then we re-engaged. We compared those 5 to each other, to the role. We did a gap report on those 5. We had our 1 hour interview, back-to-back interviews, 1 hour with a half an hour in between each interview. And at the end of that took us almost a full day. At the end of the thing, the people on the panel, the CEO, myself, and one other, actually ranked the people themselves privately. We just ranked them on a sheet of paper 5 to 1. We had a discussion, obviously, after each interview for about 15-20 minutes on the candidates. We didn't say our rank or our preference. We all ranked them, and all of us had the exact same ranking, 1 to 5. The exact same ranking. It's interesting to say, by the way, also, on the interview question, the interview process itself, because we had the interview questions, before each interview, we agreed who would focus on what area. So I was focused on behavior, somebody else was focusing on driving forces, somebody else would be focusing on acumen or on hard skills, whatever. So we decided where we want to focus on, what the key questions were that we want to ask, to delve deep, if you wish, to the candidate. And then when we came to the last stage, which was the 2 candidates, we had a half-day session with each candidate, and we had them do a presentation. We had the team interview them. We gave them a tour of the company, and we listened to the questions they asked, and we had a Q&A with them for about an hour. The whole thing took about 4.5, 5 hours with the candidates, and it was interesting. Again, just to make a comment. All the team who are the team, this is the people who are going to be working for and with the candidate. We had them interview them for 45 minutes, and we would give them the profile of the candidate and the gap report showing the strengths and weaknesses of the candidate. And at the end of the process, every single person, I think there were 5 or 6 people interviewing the candidates, the 2 candidates. Everybody agreed on the strengths and weaknesses, and everybody agreed who the preferred candidate was. There was no disagreement. And in terms of buy-in and getting support for the candidate once they're on board, that's really, really powerful. Another question coming here on the development. How do you do development? The development plan is free. So it's on our website, on the site I showed you there, ttidevelopment.com. And you see this, you see it on the slide deck when you download the guide. And you can go on that website. Once you have the gap report there, you can see where the competency gaps are, where the behavioural gaps are, and so on and so forth. You go into the development site, and it'll guide you through it, and you key in what the gaps are. It'll just ask you questions, you mark what the gaps are, and it'll produce a report identifying all those areas that need development, suggested areas for each one, what you can do to develop each area, and then a blank section where you can fill in what you're agreeing to do, who's going to do it by when, and getting signed off by the person who's supporting, like typically the boss, and the person who's in the role. So that's a separate site that you could do. Another question coming in here on the debriefing and the coaching, and the question is, how did you do the triad debriefing, and who did the coaching? Okay, well, on the debriefing and the coaching, it's very, very simple. Once the candidate had been actually selected, we sat down with the boss and the CEO and the person who'd been selected, and we walked through a comprehensive report across 4 sciences, plus the ideal candidate form and the other gaps, if you wish, the hard gaps. And we did a complete debriefing on this, walked through it line by line. So we debriefed one report first and the other report, then compared the 2 to each other, talk on the strengths and weaknesses, the ideal environment, how to manage, how to communicate, all of that. We probably gave that about half a day. I think it probably took about a full morning, from about maybe 8:30 on around 1 o'clock. So it was a pretty full morning. And but the 2 people said it was one of the best things they ever did. And interestingly, months later, when I meet them, and I'm doing more work for them now, they've brought us back in to hire more people. But when I'm out there meeting them, they all say how useful that was. So they see each other, if you wish, misbehaving, or i.e. behaving in a way that they wouldn't like the other person behaving, or doing something they wouldn't like them to be doing. And they know where it's coming from. They understand it and they expect it, and they're not surprised. The coaching, we actually were engaged. We have a separate arm to us that we actually have coaches. So we actually were engaged through the coaching, and we're now working on a 12-month program with the actual sales and marketing director, i.e. the person, the CEO designate, because that's the idea that in 12, 24 months he'll become CEO. We did a gap report against the CEO role and the sales and marketing director role, did a development plan coming from that. Did a coaching report for the individual, and are now working once a month, meeting the individual and coach the individual through their development plan. I just coach them one-on-one on areas that need to develop on, and that's part of the ongoing development plan that we have with the client. Just looking here, bear with me, a lot of questions here. Why do we put up information such as salary? Okay, we put up everything, and the reason we put up everything is because we don't want people to be under any illusions. We want to attract the people that we want to attract, and that includes people that we can afford to have, not just people who think, oh, it's a great ad, but they're completely out of our price range. We don't want to be kidding ourselves. And then my last question before we finish, look up here, somebody said, I'm a vegetarian. And the answer, that's really a funny one. The answer is no, I was, however, a vegetarian. But now I eat everything except carbs and sugar. So I eat lots of veg, but I'm also back eating meat and fish and so on and so forth. Keep it away from the carbs. I came to the conclusion that it was a better mix. And my waistline is exactly where I wanted to be. Thank you very much, whoever answered me the question. One last question here has come in. Okay. The question here is, the client who said engage you was the single best decision that they'd ever made. What were they comparing it to? What other decisions were they comparing it to? I think the answer to that is They agreed with us that the 4 key decisions that they had to make were people, getting the right people in the right seats, strategy, get those people doing the right things, flawless execution, and cash. They're the 4 key decisions. Vern Harnish, scaling up with the Rockefeller habits, he talks about these at great length. They were the 4 key decisions. And the single most important one, in fact, was getting the right person on board. And they believed after the event that we actually had done this. We'd hired not only the best sales and marketing director we could possibly find, given the constraints of our role and so on and so forth, but also a person who could in fact take over the CEO role. Therefore, by their definition, because that was the most important thing, it was actually the most best decision that they'd ever made in their business. So there you go. So listen, thanks very much, guys. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Thanks for participating in the webinar. And again, remember, download the guide, contact us if you want to talk to us. We look forward to hearing from you. So cheers. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.